This video is going to show you how to take one approach to model lesson number 2. This is what the part's ultimately going to look like. And given off the drawing that is here, given in units of millimeters, we're going to get started. And the strategy that I would take is looking at these different views here. I would say actually the top view and this outermost profile here is going to be the best strategy with which to start to make a boss extrusion. And we'll see how it goes along from there. So keep that in mind. Now, what we're going to do is going to open a new part. I'm going to remember to immediately set the units to millimeter grams second. And what I would do here is I'm going to sketch on the top plane, creating a sketch. I'm going to create a corner rectangle that comes up. Now, you don't have to worry about the size of the rectangle quite yet when you drop it off there, but right now this is going to be the point. You can come here, click on Smart Dimension, and you need to know the dimensions that you would need to have in order to make this. Now, looking back at the drawing, this dimension here, this 70 dimension here, is the dimension that's going to be required to make this feature that correct size. Now I'll challenge you to look on the drawing. It's a 40 millimeter dimension in the top view shown from that line to that line, and that's going to be 40 millimeters. Now, a tricky way we can do this, these rounded features here, these radius and that fillet, can be done actually within this sketch as a sketch entity fillet, and that's how I'm going to decide to do this. Here, I'm going to hit the escape key to get out of my smart dimensioning. I'm going to come here and I'm going to make a sketch fillet. The radius is going to be 10 millimeters. I'm going to select that line, this line, and that line. And when I hit the check OK, it's going to take that away. And now that sketch profile is complete. We're going to exit the sketch. I'm now left with the sketch. I can use this sketch by highlighting it here, going to the Features menu, or Features tab, and Extrude Boss Base. And again, you'd need to know how far we're going to extrude, and I'm actually going to decide to extrude this somewhat downward, and I'm going to go 20 millimeters downward, because that is the dimension from the front view that would come down from, and I'm going to consider that as my top plane up here. You can go do it slightly differently than that, but that's how I'm going to decide to do this. I'm going to hit the check mark here, and now we have our base extrusion. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky to come and see that this right here, this circle right here actually is what I'm going to do next. This is a little bit easier to see. We'll come and do this feature, this set of features afterwards. Now, if you were crafty, you could maybe think for yourself that maybe we could have done this circle feature within the very first sketch. But if you want to do it this way, we're going to create, and I'm going to select the topmost face of the part right here. I'm selecting that, and then I'm coming to Extruded Cut. So this is going to launch me into sketch mode when you select that. And what I also need to see here is that this circle feature is actually on center. It's kind of implied that it's actually halfway in between that line and that line there. So I'm actually going to draw a construction center line that goes from one end to the other. Let me see if this works here. So I'm going to use something like this to create a construction line that goes midway in between. So let's see how that can work. So what I'm going to do here first, I'm in my sketch mode. Okay. I'm going to draw my center line. Now, I come right there. That means draw the line midpoint on that line. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to come and snap across to that other midpoint. That little orange right there. Oops, I just double clicked and I lost it. So I'm going to come back here. So click there once. Click there once. I now have a midline going across, halfway splitting the part. This is going to make it a lot easier for me now to make this circle, which is going to be on coincident that line. And I'm coming up here and I can smart dimension it. Its diameter is going to be 20 millimeters. And its distance from this wall here, that line, edge, there, to the center point is going to be off the drawing, 50 millimeters. There. I like that placement. The circle is turned black. I'm going to exit the sketch. This is now going to allow me to extrude. Instead of going blind, I'm going to come through all on that. I check this here. I now have that circular feature going all the way through. Okay, that looks good. Now we've got to deal with these sets of features here. And how to go about doing that? Well, you have to draw your attention to the top view here and see that this kind of C-shaped profile is going to define the geometry from the top, but we do have this odd cut feature here that we're going to have to deal with. What you're going to need to realize here is that we're going to draw this outline along the C, what I call the C shape, and we're going to need to omit, not include, this little line segment right here. So that line segment isn't going to be in the sketch, and we're going to see why in a second here. So what we're going to do, I'm sketching on. I want to be sketching on this top plane. And actually, I'm going to start this off. I'm going to select that surface, and I'm going to say I want to make an extruded boss base on that surface. And now I'm in sketch mode here. And I'm going to start sketching that C shape, and I'm going to decide to do it from this top corner here and work my way around. So I'm going to go kind of quickly here and show how I'm going to sketch this out roughly. So there's that. These are all just left mouse button clicks. Notice how I come here, that blue line is kind of going to snap those together. Long. Ah, yes. And this other thing too. So I've got my C shape here. And what is also implied by this center line right here, this center line right here actually relates down the center of the part. So it actually implies this line right here and this line right here relate to that line right there and that line right there in top view. Now I'm going to create a construction line, again a symmetric center line, to make my life a little bit easier so I don't have to do as much dimensioning. I'm going to make a center line, and it's going to go from this midpoint again to that midpoint there. And we're going to see that these features right here need to be symmetric about that center line. I'm going to do this by holding down my control key, select that line, control key, select that line, and select the center line. And I'm going to make those symmetric. Okay. So I now have these, the C shape now is going to expand and contract. If I click and drag on that, it's symmetric about this center line. Now I can go about smart dimensioning this. And I'm going to allow you to take a look at the drawing and see if you can reason this, but I'm going to do this quickly. That dimension right there, off the drawing, is 20. So around there. This dimension right here, from this line to that line, is actually also a 20 millimeter dimension. Oh, and wait a minute, we have an issue here. One of them moved, and I'd love for both of them to move together, because these lines are actually what's called collinear to each other. So watch this. With one smart dimension, I'm going to select this line, hold down the Control key, select the other line, and I'm going to make those collinear. If I select this and make them collinear, they're going to snap in line, just like that. They're now in line with each other. Now, the last thing that I need to do is, yes, so that's 20 millimeters, but these can still shift left and right like this. The last thing that will constrain this fully, smart dimensioning from that line to that line again, and that is going to be 30 millimeters. Okay. So I now have the C shape. Notice how this C shape is also grayed in, meaning it's a closed profile. And it's ready then, if I exit the sketch, to be turned into an extrusion. And you again have to ask yourself, how far is this extrusion going to go? Well, you do have to do a little arithmetic here. If the bottom part was 20 millimeters tall, from there to there, and we're now going from this surface upwards, this dimension right here is 40. Well, the dimension from where we're going from here up is going to be 20 millimeters. So we are going to extrude. Hey, by default, it got lucky there. If that number isn't 20, you would type in 20 there. Click the green check mark. And we have from the top the C shape. But now we have to deal with this triangular, dare I say, cutout that's represented in the isometric view. How are we going to do this? Well, we come take a look at the front view again, and we're going to be making a sketch that is literally this triangular shape that would kind of create this notch away. Now you have to be careful on which surfaces you select again, and it's actually going to be this face of the part on which I want to make an extruded cut. Now, making this on this surface here, it's going to be a line up. I don't want it to snap to the midpoint, so you don't want to do that. I'm just going to make the line over here, back, and there. There's my triangular. My triangle profile is cut off. What you're going to need to do is smart dimension appropriately to make this the right size. The features that clue you in is going to be this 20 millimeter dimension here. It's going to be important. So I'm going to do that by going here. From that line or edge to that point is 20 millimeters. And that's actually all that was needed to fully define that sketch. Once I exit the sketch, we're going to use this cool feature. Instead of going blind with the depth, instead of going through all, which would take out all the way across, we don't want that. We're going to go up to next. This is what's going to just take out that one kind of part of the C shape. I click check, and there you go. In just a few minutes here, that part is modeled up. You would save this, take a screenshot, doing Control and 7, capture a screenshot of that for credit, and we were able to accomplish that feature, or this part, in 4 features. I challenge you to think, is there a way that we could have eliminated this extra feature by maybe sketching a circle? The very first sketch. But anyway, that's one way of doing lesson number 2.